All right, so nice artwork right throughout the whole thing. I mean, most of the artwork for Dungeons & Dragons 5e has been really good. I don't think there's anything to complain about. I'm not going to bother reading the disclaimer. It's not that great, and hence why I don't really bother reading them out. The first ones were great, but now, no, not really. I'm going to flick off a light and see if that has any kind of effect on my screen. Why is it doing that? I know why it's doing that. There's too not much light coming through the window and there's nothing I can do about it. So hopefully it clears up or the sun goes away. I don't know. I do apologise if you can't quite make out everything. I've done my best to set everything up. It was all working fine before. Alright, I've turned every light off I possibly can so that the screen should be a little better. You'll let me know if it's unacceptable, okay? Alright, here we go. Reverb gone. Excellent, thank you, John Paul. Close the curtains. I don't have any curtains, that's the thing. I don't have any curtains. I know it's a drag. Okay, so let's go into contents page. Welcome to Ravnica. So basic history of Ravnica. Chapter 1 covers character creation. Chapter 2 is the guilds of Ravnica. Chapter 3 is District 10, which I was talking about the location that you get access to. Chapter 4 is creating an adventure, how to create an adventure, how to build characters into the different guilds so you can sort of interact with them and the world itself. Different treasures that you might come across. That's chapter 5, and then chapter 6 is friends and foes, so that's sort of your monster stuff. And then the sidebars are all listed here. Since they don't do indexes nowadays, apparently the contents page is all as required. Oh, hang on, I was wrong. There is an index. They have provided you with a stat block index for the monsters. So that's, I guess, something. I still feel like they have missed the point. The index is supposed to be at the back, not at the front. And we get a little bit of a run over, sort of a letter, you might say. Okay, so welcome to Ravnica. Talks about the city and guilds, and there are 10 guilds that we'll go through as we go. Flicking through there. I do apologise, guys. I don't know if I can fix it. It's really too late. Once you start the cameras going, there's not much I can do to adjust things after that. Okay, life in the big city talks about that. There are a lot of charts in this book. Different languages that are spoken by various individuals. You're going to be dealing with demons and celestials and angels and all sorts. There's such a mix of... it's sort of like a multi-ethnic location, you might say. Currencies. There is some very nice artwork, full page in some locations. Chapter 1, character creation. So you choose a guild, you build your party, you select a race. There are different races that you can select for Ravnica. And it goes through, what I love about this is they haven't just provided you with charts, they've provided you with questions that you should ask yourself as a player. This is on page 13. And it gives you sort of a flow chart that you work your way through as you're building your character, which I think is actually a very sensible thing to do. And so that will help you work out what your character will be like. Elves, you get your standard sort of high elves, wood elves, dark elves. They are slightly different because it's in the world of Ravnica. You get the centaur and some attributes around them. We've got goblins. So if you're really wanting to play a goblin, you certainly can now play a goblin. What I've already talked about Luxodon, which is basically elephant person. I think it's fantastic. I like the idea of an elephant person. I would pinch the elephant person and stick it into a different campaign. Forgotten Realms, Eberron, I don't care, my own world. Or I would also take the centaur. I think the idea of playing a centaur is like super cool. It's very fantasy, right? It's very fantasy rather than your standard stuff. So it gives you all of the, it's your standard sort of ability score increases, what sort of age they come to, alignment, size, speed, what sort of vision they might have, and some class features that they possess. All of that is discussed. We also get the Minotaur. Now, I don't know if anybody knows, but I played a Minotaur years ago when I was playing Dungeons and Dragons 4E, and the Minotaur, I would pilfer the Minotaur and place it wherever I like. I like playing monsters as a player. I know that sounds strange, but it's just fun. So it goes into all of that. It also gives you sort of suggestions for male and female names, just like you would find in the Player's Handbook. We also get the Simek Hybrid. The Simek Hybrid is sort of like your Frankenstein mess up. Somebody's played with genetics and got a little bit carried away, all in the aid of supposedly making people better. We've heard this story before. I don't know that I believe it. Vidalcan. We get the Vidalcan. This is the purple people. Is it blue people or the purple people? The blue purple people. Essentially, Vidalcan is Wizards of the Coast stealing from Star Trek the Vulcan. They're very Vulcan in nature. Essentially, you get to play a Vulcan in Ravnica or in Dungeons and Dragons. That's really the whole idea behind that. It's very D&D. I mean, TSR was pinching things from different pulp ideas for years, so why wouldn't Wizards of the Coast and Magic the Gathering? Okay, so we get classes. So it talks a little bit about the sort of class that you might be or select and which guilds you might be part of. That's sort of what this is all about here. So it doesn't necessarily give you additional classes or subclasses or archetypes for your classes. There are some, but it sort of just talks here roughly about what guilds you might be if you have selected this particular class. Okay, and that covers all of them right through the whole lot. Now there are some subclasses that you can use if you want to. There is some cleric domains available to you if you want to have that. The order domain, why not? There's so many domains for clerics. Why not add another one? We also get access to the Druid Circle of Spores. So if you like to play with fungus, you can now make yourself a Druid who likes spores and fungus. So you get all of your usual attributes and features revolving around that. Halo of Spores. I don't know that I would want to have any kind of halo that revolves around spores, but if you're a Druid, I suppose that's a really good thing to have, right? Some additional spells. Fungal infection. Sounds really bad. It doesn't sound like a good thing to have. I might read it out just briefly. At 6th level, so when you get to level 6, your spores gain the ability to infest the corpse and animate it. Okay, so in other words, you can create your own fungi undead creatures. Why not? I kind of get it now. Okay, so Chapter 2 is the Guilds of Ravnica. Now, this makes up quite a huge chunk of the first part of the book. It talks about the bonds and contacts you can have, spells, what sort of spells the guilds might use. You get access to so many different things. This is sort of like backgrounds on speed, if you ask me. Talks a little bit about renown, so you get renowned by doing things for your guilds. One of the things I did notice about this book is that it's a really good book, but I can see a problem with having a party made up of different guilds, simply because to help tie that all together, you really need the players to be doing the hard yards. If it's the Dungeon Master having to do the hard yards, it's going to make it really, really difficult. Hence, I just don't like the idea of that being the case at my table. I would probably be wanting my players to play in the same guild, or at least not too many separate guilds that are antagonistic against each other, which is hard to do because they tend to be like that. Styles of membership, changing guilds. So you can change guilds. You don't have to stay in the same guild. You might have change your allegiances. Azorius Senate. The Azorius Senate are, I would put them down as essentially very much like the Lord's Alliance. That's my sort of view of them. They're kind of sort of relatively above board sort of individuals. Their goals are about perfection in society. They're law enforcement, that sort of thing. What sort of features do you get? Well, you got to be lawful. Usually you're lawful. I suppose you could be neutral, but you're usually not chaotic if you're Azorius Senate. So your character, there are some suggestions here. I mean, obviously you don't have to do it that way, but as the Dungeon Master, you might put in some provisos saying, look, I need to have you do certain things and meet certain requirements. So how to join. Skill proficiencies for this are insight, intimidation, languages. You get 2 of your choice. That's quite nice. Your equipment, I'm not going to worry too much about that. Equipment is equipment. And there is a whole lot of, just like your backgrounds, you get some spells that you get access to, which you don't normally get with your backgrounds. So the Azorius Senate, and all of them are like this to a large extent. You get charts for personality traits, ideals, bonds, flaws, sort of contacts you might have, non-Azorius contacts you might have, so don't have to all be Azorius. So very much like getting your own background. And then it does actually talk in each guild about how you fit yourself into the campaign and how to actually function in a party with other members who aren't Azorius. Okay? And it goes over the different ranks that you can gain. Who might be your enemies, who might you not get along with, what your reaction to them might be. The Boris Legion. Boris Legion. Okay, so when you think Boris Legion, what am I thinking? I'm thinking criminals, exploiting stuff, petty tyrants. I'm thinking garbs of power, increasing my station, and yeah, I kind of view this particular guild a lot like the Zents myself from the Forgotten Realms. So usually you're going to be good, apparently, and often lawful, which I find kind of a little bit stuffed. Oh, hang on, sorry, I read that wrong. They're about dealing with those people who are criminals. Sorry, they're really pretty hard about it too, like an iron fist, actually. Humans, goblins, minotaurs might be the races you use. Suggested classes are cleric, fighter, paladin. A little bit of information on your martial training you might have and what sort of magical study you'll get. You do get access to spells, so some cantrips, some first level spells. I think this is all really cool. Some of the all of the normal stuff you would get, personality traits, bonds, flaws, so forth. Sort of contacts, non-contacts you would have. That's all there. I'm going to flip through this fairly quickly now because it's going to take me a long time. It all follows the same sort of pattern. We get the HowtoDandD. What can I say about them? Basically, they're all about secrets, misinformation. There's a lot of higher members who are vampiric or vampires, who sort of suck the life out of individuals. All about in the shadows. So yes, very deceitful. We get what sort of alignment might you be? You might be neutral, sometimes evil. So this might be a guild you would have trouble as a dungeon master allowing in your game if you don't want everything to sort of unfold, unless the player is able to do it without making the whole campaign suck. Races might be half elf and human. Suggested classes: monk, rogue, and the wizard. And you get access to a whole lot of different spells, just like the other ones that I've talked about. Cantrips that you get disguise self and sleep at first level. Cantrips are encoded thoughts and mage hand. Your personality traits, bonds, flaws, and ideals are all there. Sort of contacts you might have. It doesn't have a section for non-Demir contacts. It only has a chart for contacts that are related to your own guild. So what that tells me is, and I have read some of this stuff, is they have a lot more trouble interacting with some of the other guilds because of the very nature of how they operate. but there is information about how to tie them into your campaign and into the party. And you get there are a few prerequisites as you rank up, so certain things you need to achieve. So all of the guilds have a ranking system within the book. The Golgar Swarm. So what can I say about the Golgar Swarm? They celebrate growth, the natural world, giving equal attention to nature and the natural world. So yeah, I wouldn't say tree huggers, but I would say close to. So alignments, neutral, often evil as well. So there's a little bit of a twisted darkness to them, but I wouldn't say that they're necessarily a bad guild as such. I mean, a lot of the guilds have their own sort of redeeming features. Races, human, the dark elf, for those of you who want to play drow-like creatures. What sort of races? Druid, fighter, ranger, rogue, wizard. And yes, again, you get access to guild spells, such as cantrips, the Dancing Lights, Spare the Dying, Enlarge, Ray of Sickness, all of which, you know, at level 3 there's Animate Dead, but not all of these are really bad things. So there's nothing terribly bad about Spare the Dying, there's nothing terribly bad about, where is it? Plant Growth. Not really bad spells. Entangle, not a bad spell. I said Enlarge, didn't I? Shouldn't have said that. It's Entangle. Personality traits, all that sort of stuff, the background stuff you get. What sort of skills do you get? Nature, survival. Your tool proficiencies are Poisoner's Kit. That doesn't sound so good. Languages, you get to choose one of Elvish and Giant, or you get Krill. I'm not entirely sure what Krill is, and you get a whole bunch of equipment, as you would normally do. Talks about the contacts you might have in your guild and the ones you might not, you would have that are not part of your guild. And as before, all of these guild sections have a section on how to integrate them into the campaign and story, and how to make them part of the party as well. And the ranking system is there is included. There are a huge number of sidebars. I noticed there was so many. Yes, Entangle is a fantastic option to have. Okay, then we get the Growl Clans. Now, what can I say about the Growl Clans? Their goals are, well, their philosophy is more about a way of life. So living in the now, being concerned for forethought, planning, speculation. So there's a lot of sort of thinking going on in this particular guild. So that's sort of their bent. What sort of alignments might you have for them? Well, that would be chaotic and often neutral. Races, human, centaur, goblin, minotaur. My favourites, I love it. Choose a class. Well, barbarian, cleric, druids, fighters and rangers do really well in this particular guild. Really nice artwork. The light is starting to improve, which is good because it means it's actually a bit more useful to you guys. Okay. The background features for this particular one. You get animal handling, athletics, herbalism kit. Always nice to have proficiency with that. Languages, you choose one of Draconic, Giant, Goblin, or Sylvan. So you get to pick one of those. Equipment, I'm not going to go over the equipment, it's just too much information. Each one also has a guild feature. So when you get a background, you also get like a background feature. So each of the guilds has a feature. I haven't been reading them out just because there's so many guilds. There's like 10 guilds. I could be here forever otherwise. You get some spells. The cantrips are Firebolt and Produce Flame. So lots of burning going on here. Personality traits and bond flaws. You get your normal contacts for your guild and contacts that aren't part of your guild and how to fit it in. The ranking system is covered as well. And you can see they're very much sort of a bit more primitive in how they operate just by the artwork. The Is it League? So what can I say about the Is it League? I would say vain, temperamental, super intelligent, and there is a dragon who heads this particular guild. So that's always, look, I don't know if you've seen some of the artwork related to this particular, is it? I believe there's a miniature. He's not exactly very nice. And I don't think everybody necessarily knows, if they're part of the guild, that there is a dragon leading the whole thing. But yes, I think it's a cool idea. I think it's awesome, actually. I would say this is kind of like the Cult of the Dragon, but just not quite. Okay. All right. So, what are their goals? Well, a thirst for knowledge. They cherish intelligence, and they specialize in secrets of the multiverse. So not just Ravnica, but the whole thing. And they get up to mischief, a lot of mischief. Okay, so what sort of alignment might you be? You'd be chaotic, often neutral. Races suggested are human, goblin, Vidalcan, or Vulcan. I know it's not Vulcan, Vidalcan. Still seems like Vulcan to me. Nesmizet is very well known in the Ravnica, actually, and he made a huge maze in the middle of it. What a good idea. I don't actually know a huge amount about Magic the Gathering. I have been trying to learn a lot. I use a lot of the artwork in my thumbnails and my videos. But thank you for that. That was very helpful. Okay, so what sort of skills do you get? Arcana, Investigation, makes a lot of sense. Languages, choose one of the following. Draconic, Goblin, or Vidalcan. Makes a lot of sense. Tool proficiencies, one of the artisan tools. So you get to do something, which is always nice. Your spells, I'm just going to say what their cantrip is. So you get spells like all of them. The cantrips are Produce Flame and Shocking Grasp. There is also a couple of, well, there's at least one spell here called Chaos Bolt. That is, as far as I can tell, tied to this particular guild. It is not your normal spell you find in the player's handbook or anywhere else. So it's an addition. Kind of cool, if you ask me. And you do get access to it as a level 1 spell. And there's a whole lot of different damage types for this Chaos Bolt. So if you're looking for additional spells out of this book, there is at least one here. And it does level up, so it does level up as you go, which I think is quite good. It's a good feature. Personality traits, ideals, bonds, flaws. As normal, you get your contacts for the Is It, and the ones that are not related to the Is It as well, how to fit them in, renowned. So yes, all about power. You've got to love a dragon who decides to build a maze in the middle of a city and then fill it with minotaurs and various other creatures. Okay. Now you'll notice that there is almost always a sort of a highlighted box. And this usually indicates, as I said, the view of the guild towards other guilds and sort of how they would interact. And it's actually going to be quite important to check that box out as you're building your character. The Orzhov, hopefully, Syndicate, the Orzhov, hopefully I've got it right. Orzhov. I believe it's correct. Okay, so what are their goals? They are dedicated to the quest of power. I really don't think I need to say much more than that. It's all about power for them. What sort of alignment might you be? You would be usually lawful, often evil, humans. They tend to be human rather than any other race. And the classes are cleric, fighter, rogue, and wizard. What sort of spells? You get a whole bunch of spells. You don't seem to get necessarily an additional new spell, but there's access as a cantrip to friends and guidance, first level's command, and illusionary script. So what sort of skills do you get? Intimidation, religion. You get 2 languages of your choice. You can pick anything you like. Equipment, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to keep moving on. Otherwise, this video is going to be very long. It's already very, very long. And yes, there is non-contact and contacts related to your guild covered, how to fit them in just as before, and the ranking system. You see there's a lot of information. Cult of Rakdos. So what is Rakdos all about? Their goals are centered around Demon Lord, who has really caused a lot of trouble in Ravnica in the past. So this is probably one guild that would cause a lot of trouble in a party, if you ask me. Unless, of course, they kind of keep all of that secret. Which I don't think it's going to be... It is a cult. It says cult, right? Sounds like bad news. When it says cult, it's bad. Yeah. So, demons, cults. What are you going to... Alignments will usually be chaotic or evil. Races, human, goblin... And what sort of classes? Barbarian, bard, fighter, warlock. Well, there you go. There you go. It answers a lot, doesn't it? You do get skill proficiencies in acrobatics, performance, languages. You get to choose either abyssal or giant. Tool proficiencies. One type of musical instrument. So you can play a nice musical instrument as you burn your enemies to the ground. Okay. Performance options. So you get to select a performance that you can do well. So fire juggling. Ooh, pain artist. What the heck is that? Noise musician. Not just musician, a noise musician. What do they use? Just pots and pans or something. And then there's also master of ceremonies. Nightmare clown. Oh my gosh. It just reminds me of... We don't want to go there. You know what? As soon as you start saying clowns and they're sort of like not the friendly ones, everybody freaks out. Moving on. So what sort of spells do you get access to? Firebolt and Vicious Mockery. Of course, that makes an awful lot of sense. Your flaws, bonds, ideals, all there, personality traits, your contacts, whether they be guild related or not guild related, all there as well. How to fit them in, I've said that before. I'm going to keep moving as fast as I possibly can, and the ranking system. Lots of red. So evil stuff. Now I have a lot of trouble pronouncing this, but I'm going to try. Salsnia Conclave. Salsnia Conclave. I hope I got it right. I certainly do. Who knows? So what are their goals? What can I say about them? Growing tensions. A gripe with the world. They have a long view. And yes, so look, I actually feel like some of the guilds, I mean, although they are different flavour to them, some of them do sort of repeat stuff, as far as I can tell. Salsnia, no idea. It sounds like Salsnia to me. Alignments, usually good, neutral, races, human, centaur, the wood elf, the half-elf, the Loxodon, that's the elephant person, and then classes suggested are Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, and the Warlock. How to join them. What would you get in terms of your skills? Well, you're going to get Nature, Persuasion, Tool Proficiencies, one of the Artisan tools, or you get to pick yourself a musical instrument. Sounds like a good choice. One language option, and it'll be Elvish, Loxodon, or Sylvan. I'm not going to go over the equipment as usual. What sort of spells, though? So the cantrips offered are Dancing Lights and Friends. Kind of cool. I'm going to skip past all of the background stuff here. It still goes over the process of tying you in. My feeling is that it sort of reminds me a little bit of the Emerald Enclave from the Forgotten Realms. And the ranking system is included as well. A lot of green. They're all about the green stuff. The Simek Combine. I have to say that the Simek Combine out of all of the guilds is one of my favourites, simply because their philosophy and principles is so wacky. It reminds me of the genetic modification in our current world. Their philosophy and principle is that you need to combine different stuff to get something else out the other end they explore nature and science, but they mix it up. So they're all about experimenting, trying to move things forward for the better good to a large extent. Doesn't always work out that way though. But still, it's really cool guild. I thought it was really impressive. It's sort of very Frankenstein-y, if you ask me. Alignment, usually neutral. Suggested races, human or elf. That's the high elf and the Simek hybrid. Or the Vidalcan. Of course, it would be the Vidalcan. Suggested classes, druid, fighter, monk, wizard. All really cool options. And we're going to keep our spells. The cantrip options are Acid Splash and Druidcraft. So you can kind of see where they're going with this. They're researchers, that's the feature. I don't often call out the feature for these guilds, but I will call out that one. It's pretty obvious. They're all about experimentation, right? And the different contracts, how to, contacts that you would have, whether they be part of your guild or not, and the different ranking system. Okay, now that's all of the guilds. Now I'm on page 98. There's some artwork here, but 97, 98. There's a lot of material for players. There's a huge amount. From here on out, I would say it's the Dungeon Master rather than the player, okay? So Chapter 3 is about District 10. It breaks it down, and you have 6 different precincts that are covered here, with little maps as well. What I love about it is they give you a 10th district overall map to show you where everything is. It's not the kind of map that you're used to though. It's very sort of artistic in nature rather than being sort of black and white or showing you really specific things. So if you were hoping for that kind of map, you're not going to get it, unfortunately. And each of the precincts is covered, gives you headers for everything and a little map to go with a precinct that's sort of a little bit more broken down. But yet again, it's very, very artistic in nature, and it just gives you sort of basic locations. So there's actually quite a lot of work required by you as a Dungeon Master, and this is a broad stroke concept. There are charts for the different types of people who would be around there, the sort of rumors you might hear. It's all designed around helping you build your own adventures. That's my view anyway, and building the world that your players will explore. Precinct 2, same sort of principle. Small map, very artistic. A brief rundown of each area that is detailed on the map. So they do have labels on them, or ledgers. Services that you might come across, law and crime, how that works, and yet again the types of people and rumors you would come across. Precinct 3 is all about, there's a little bit of information about affiliated guilds. This is sort of like the neighborhood and landmarks location. So so how can I make it clear? This is sort of like the stable and garden location, for those of you who are wondering what this particular precinct is about. Each precinct has a particular focus. Does that make sense? And a little artistic rundown. Goods and services, law and crime covered, people, rumors. You can use the charts, you don't have to use them, you don't have to roll randomly if you don't want to. Precinct 4 is a bit darker in its nature. So this is it's more about night. I feel like each precinct has sort of a theme and a flavour to them. So they're not all the same, even though it's like a cityscape. The whole world is a cityscape. So yes, breaks down the map again, and you get your rumours and so forth. Precinct 5, and you can see by the artwork, it sort of gives you an idea of what you're likely to expect. Precinct 5 is really they're prestigious universities, ancient libraries, hidden laboratories. This is all Precinct 5. And yes, you get a map just like the other ones, and sort of a rundown of the basic areas. Goods and services, rumours, people, law and crime. Okay, so the last precinct is 6, and this is really just made up of large warehouses, major thoroughfares. Basically, it's sort of the back section of any kind of world where you store stuff. Affiliated guilds related to this, So each area sort of talks about the different guilds and which guilds would be operating in that particular precinct too, by the way. You get your map, you get your people, you get your rumours, and you get your breakdown on goods, services, law, so forth. Okay, so that is the District 10 and precincts broken down. And this is page 23 now. So chapter 4 is creating an adventure. Now this is really important because they've provided you with your character stuff, they've provided you with the location, they've given you races, and now they're giving you the tools to actually build your own adventures in this world. So how to connect to locations, some of the guild villains you might use. You don't have to always use a guild villain. It doesn't have to be a guild that's doing something bad. Some of the guild's locations and the goals they have. So this is really just a collection of adventure hooks and how to build adventure hooks. How to choose a guild related to your adventure. How to deal with dungeon delving, wilderness, mysteries that you might include, intrigue. There's a lot of intrigue in this world, so I understand them building that in. Disasters that might occur. We get how to involve the characters in your adventure. So crossing purposes. So they have expected you to have individuals in your party who don't actually belong to the same guild. And so there's going to be some intrigue. There's going to be some spying on each other. There's going to be a bit of rivalry, but as always, there's got to be a connection. So make sure when you're building your adventure that you make sure you do your zero session with this sort of stuff, because otherwise it's going to unfold on you. Lots of intrigue and how to use charts related to that. The Azoria Senate. Now here, this is where it gets really good, because what you get is how to build a story around a guild. So the Azoria Senate, and it gives you location information for the Azoria Senate. All the maps, nice and easy to read. So this is black and white stuff. It's not really artistic. So you can actually draw these out and use them in your adventure if you wanted to. What sort of goals Azoria's characters might have in your adventure. Other adventure hooks, all covered. And they do this for every single one of the guilds. The Boris Legion, map, villains you might have, how to build an adventure, just adventure hook stuff really. How to tie in the characters, what the goals of the Boris characters would be, and some of the villains you might encounter. I think this is all really good stuff, and I think there's about 2 or 3 pages for every single guild. House Demir, so safe houses, and yes, you get a safe house map. Each location is themed very, very differently, so it's going to feel it's not going to feel the same. That's what I have found anyway. The goals for your characters, adventure hooks again, and some of the various enemies that you might have for that guild. The Golgar Swarm map, same sort of stuff. You get your adventure hooks, villains you might use, and some of the ways of tying your characters into the goals for the adventure. I love this stuff. This is great. All of this is super useful. It's a toolbox. That's essentially what it is. The next one is the Growl Clans. They get a completely different type of map. This isn't like a building as such. This is more like ruins. So you can see what I'm talking about. So between 2 and 3 pages for each one. The Izzet League covers them as well, and their map as well. We get the Orzhov Syndicate. Now, not every single guild gets the same sort of rundown. Some of them get a little bit more page count than others. So if you're wondering if they get equal time, no, they don't get equal time. There's clearly been sort of a preference to build out some of them more than others. Whether that's because of the nature of that guild or whether it's a different reason completely, I don't know. Okay. You get their map, you get their character goals for them, adventure hooks again. The Cult of Rakdos, great map, bit of artwork, some adventure hooks, how to tie your character in again, the Salthenia Conclave, their map. This map was really awesome. When I looked at it, I realized what it was. It's a combination, this building here, a combination of building and creature. That's why you see the big tongue. That's why it looks very sort of, it's like a combination of man-made structure or constructed structure and an organic creature, which I think is fantastic. How to use them as villains, what their goals would be if you have a party member who is part of this particular guild. The Simek Combine, which is very, this is each of the architecture for each guild is very different. I don't know if you've noticed as if we've been working our way through, it looks slightly different. It's not the same. They seem to be very round, sort of half circle sort of stuff. And what sort of things would the Simek Combine wind up resulting and causing trouble with? Well, it's Godzilla, giant monsters crushing the town, or city, should I say, the city world. So yes, go for it. If you want that Godzilla feeling or that King Kong feeling, that particular guild can do it. And I think that's really cool. I think the idea of bringing that sort of stuff in is just super interesting. Adventure hooks, how to tie your characters in again. Now, we've done all the guilds. They've given you adventure hooks, maps, how to tie the characters in for every single guild. And now this is the adventure. This is Krenkos Way. Now, this is basically a goblin adventure. Now, I know you're thinking, oh, more goblins. But these goblins are actually quite interesting. And what I love about this is it's flavoured for the world of Ravnica. It gives you enough to get you started. This adventure isn't really putting the guilds in a bad way. So not everything that takes place that's in Ravnica is a result of the guilds doing something bad. Sometimes it's them working in the background. But this adventure is structured so you can have multiple characters from different guilds taking part to complete this adventure, which is great. It has all the bits and pieces you might need. I wouldn't say the structure for the adventure is superb, but it's good enough to get the job done, and it's short enough that you won't sort of struggle too much. And yes, there are some maps included, some stat blocks. Now, this is probably the first time you've probably seen stat blocks included in a Dungeons and Dragons book without them being at the back. Why is that? Because they're very specific to this adventure. And I think that's deliberate. Will this continue? I don't know. I have no idea. Okay, so Chapter 5 is Treasure. So this is all of the goodies, you know, how copper, silver, electrum, gold, platinum all works. What sort of jewelry or charms the different guilds have. Each of the guilds has their own charm that you can collect and does different things. Magic items. There are some very specific stuff related to this world. There's a lot of reference. They give you the reference source for various magic items that are listed that would be used by a particular guild in here. And I'm going to work my way through here fairly quickly. I'm going to switch on through here quickly because I didn't think there's much point going over it. Okay, so Chapter 6, Friends and Foes. This is basically the monster and NPC area, okay? Types of creatures you might come across. So what they've done is they've selected sort of the types of guild creatures that might be used in that guild. And they've given you a source that you need to go back to. One of the things I don't like about this book is that you would have to own quite a lot of the other source books. So Monster Manual, Dungeon Master's Guide, Volvo's Guide to Monsters, all of those sorts of things you're going to need to have access to, otherwise you can't actually use all the stuff that's here. So if you're going to have this book, you will need to have a whole lot of other books as well. And I'm going to skip through this because this is basically just a collection of where to find stuff. The Beastry is here. We get the Battle Force Angel. Lots of angels in this world. We get the Fire Main Angel, we get the Death Pact Angel. We get the Archeon of the Trum variant. I believe it's something like that. The Arch Light Phoenix. The Conclave Dryad. Demons. So you're going to get the Cackler. I believe there's a miniature for the Cackler now too. Master of Cruelties. Shore of Insanity. What is this? This is a Lich. A Faldir. Faldir. Is it Faldir? I feel like have they stolen something from the Never-Ending Story? Falcor, Faldir. I'm wondering. Okay. A Blood Fray Giant. Now, not all the giants are huge size. Some are large size. A Guardian Giant. Some of the factions have various types of giants that serve them. Orzhov Giant, which is quite small. It's sort of like a Cyclops creature. The Sunder Shaman. Flying Horrors. Shadow Horror. Skittering Horror. Indentured Spirit. So, yes, sometimes death is not a good thing because you will still be playing the game because your spirit is held in the world of Ravnica. The Blister Coil Weird, some strange elemental creature. The Flux Charger. The Galvanic Weird. Now category Crisis. Now there's a whole lot of Crisis. There's category 1. There's a category 2, which I thought looked really impressive. Kind of looks like an overgrown, what do you call it, crocodile that's sort of partly toad. You get the category 3, which is, this one looks like it's like a crocodile tortoise or turtle. You get the Krull Warrior. I would say reminds me of, what is it? Thri-Kreen from Dark Sun. The Krull Death Priest, so another insect creature with many legs and arms. The Night Veil Spectre. The Gloomwing. This is basically a dragon-like creature. That's essentially what I see it as. It's got wings, it flies, it's a dragon-like creature. Nivix Cyclops. Basically a Cyclops that's got a whole lot of armament attached to it. Think Scooby-Doo and some of the monsters, I believe. What is it? What is it? There's some sort of deep sea fisherman or something that has like a diving gear. That's kind of like what that is. Hybrid Brute, Hybrid Flyers, Hybrid Poisoners. Got to have hybrids, don't you? Hybrid Shockers, Hybrid Spies, lots of hybrids. The Skyjet Rock. So basically they took the big bird, the rock, and they put some armor on it. And now it's flying around doing its thing. The Sky Swimmer? I feel like the Sky Swimmer is a little bit like the Chinese dragon, just covered in armament and lots of spikes. Servitor Thrall, Winged Thrall. We've got an Undercity Medusa. Got to have Medusas. That means somebody's getting turned to stone. Awesome. Cool. Vampires, the Blood Drinkers. I think it's more interesting if they're drinking something other than blood. A few pages back on page 95, the Cacklers make excellent change up for imps. Yeah, I get it. I believe. Pinch it. Use it. Go for it. Good idea. Get past the vampires. We get the Mind Drinker vampire. So it's not just about vampires that drink your blood. It's much worse. They can drink your mind as well. Sounds really bad. I don't really want anybody drinking my mind or my blood, really. We get the Worm. So I've noticed that a lot of the monsters are sort of armoured. So they have been pumped up to make them even worse than they were before. So think Purple Worm with armour. It's a siege monster. It has probably been constructed specifically to cause a lot of trouble. That's my impression of it anyway. Okay, soldiers. Now you get NPCs, so they've provided you with a few NPCs. A few particular ones. this is basically the Supreme Judge Espera. Espera is a sphinx. Very, very large sphinx, like the size of a castle. Don't annoy her. Don't wind up getting caught. Law mages, precognitive mages, and then each of the different guilds get sort of like a number of NPCs related to them. So the Boris NPCs would be Aurelia, the Fire Fist, the Frontline Medic, and the Reckoner, which is obviously a Minotaur-like creature. It seems like it to me anyway. Dumas, what do we got here? The Lazav, I'm not sure what the Lazav is. Mind Mage, Thought Spies, kind of boring if you ask me. The Golgar, they get Jared Vod Savo. Seems like a lich to me. Certainly very undead. Nothing wrong with having a lich though. And a little bit of information on the lair for that. Golgar Shaman, if you wanted that. The Growl NPCs are more goblinoid-like. We get a Druid of the old ways. Look, I'm going to say, skip past this stuff. Nes Mevet is in here. So if you're wanting the stat block for Nes Mevet, it's here. You don't need to worry about missing out. You're not missing out on anything. And then you get your Cosmotronic Blast Seekers, Counterflux. I don't know what the heck is all. It's obviously goblins who do stuff. You can integrate other races. It actually just states in the stat block you can integrate whatever race. But I think the idea behind it is there's going to be a lot of goblins involved. Scorchers. Lots of technology being used. We get access to ghosts. Obvedat Ghost and Obvedat Ghost. Gosh, man, why is it that Dungeons and Dragons has names that are so hard to pronounce? Rakdos, if you wanted the Rakdos demon, it's here. The Blood Witch, Raktivos Lampoona. I don't know what that is. That is weird. Does that look like an evil jester? I feel like it's an evil jester. Rakdos Performer. I feel that's a fire eater or a fire blower. He blows fire, makes music, burns people. Who knows? And what have we got here? We've got fairy people, basically. Fae. Lots of fae. We're almost to the end here. Zignar. I'm not too sure who Zignar is, but it's part of the Simek NPCs, or Simek Combine. And that is it. Just about. That's it. Look, there's a lot of information in here. Okay, there's a lot of content. It is definitely a really good campaign book. So if you're looking for a campaign book that was going to do what you need it to do, it has the character stuff, it has the location stuff, it has the information about your world, it has an adventure so you don't have to build one straight off the bat. It has enough information to build adventure hooks, goals for your villains, goals for your characters. I actually think it's a really good book. Whether I will use it myself is a different story. I'm likely to pinch races from it. That's just how I am. I like races. So look, if you found this useful, and hopefully you did, then share and like the video. If you didn't like the video, that's what the thumbs down's for. If you want to keep watching this sort of content, there's going to be a lot of reviews over 2019. I've contacted a few suppliers, so they will definitely send me some stuff. They've already told me they will. So that's coming. So there will be more. I usually do content on the books, just not necessarily every single time and as quickly as I would like. So I do apologize for that aspect of it. So hit the subscribe, hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I'm publishing a new video that's been pre-recorded. You supported me by watching this video. I do thank you. I don't do Patreon, and I will not be doing Patreon for 2019. I I do have affiliate links down in the description where you can buy stuff from the book depository and Amazon if you want to. Now, this is your opportunity while I'm still here to ask questions, give feedback, all that sort of stuff. You're welcome to do so right now. If you're not part of the live stream, then that's what the comment section's for. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.